Hi, everybody. This is Mary from ReachForce, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled The Cost of Dirty Data and Calculations to Figure Your ROI. Cost calculations to drive better decisions. I couldn't remember my exact title. This is some research that we've been working on for a while, and it's something that's really something that I've been really involved with because for me, this has to resonate with our own marketing operation. And this was a great experience researching both sides of the equation. And I think that it helps for those of us in operations, whether it's sales or marketing. We actually, I think a lot of us understand the real pain. It's hard to quantify though. And I think for marketing leadership, that's really has their neck on the line for revenue attribution. There's a lot of nuggets here which certainly apply. So I'm trying to drive my slide, and I'm on a Mac. If anybody's ever been with me before, there's always a technical difficulty, which makes it just that much more exciting. So this is something I think is just kind of fun, which I haven't seen Dilbert in a while myself, and I'm always happy to see him. And this is it's almost it is a total joke that there's something about the data that's always wrong, and it's just which part is wrong. And when you try to think about why the quality of your data is so important to your campaigns and your results, um, it really isn't apparent until you've resolved it and put it to use. So, there's a certain level of miraculous improvement that occurs when you don't have bad emails or a lot of duplication or more relevance. But the relevance is the second piece, the cleaning and improvement of data, which is really an ongoing process because every time we go to a new event or host a webinar, we are getting new input. When we have someone fill out a form, we're getting new input. We're getting new input if we have synced our CRM with our marketing automation. And so you have a lot of moving parts that aren't necessarily aligned in their interest or communicating appropriately. But at the end of the day, it's really marketing results and revenues that are affected. This is an example that I threw up here because this was somebody who not only got the improvement in deliverability, he also was really smart about some of the cool new things he was able to do with it to increase the relevancy of the messaging to improve his marketing results overall. Well, this is interesting because that isn't a slide that I meant to have in here. There we go. Sorry, I think it was covering up something else, believe it or not. So, I think that those of us who are doing B2B marketing, we all have priorities which have to do with ultimately, are we getting enough leads to flow to MQL, to flow to opportunities open, flowing to our closed won rate to drive ultimately the results that our businesses are seeking. But that's pretty complicated. And when we break it down into the priorities and challenges, they're fairly well aligned. And it starts with lead generation because that is at the top of the funnel, and then converting qualified leads into paying customers. So, we look at these things, your branding, reputation, and awareness can feed some of those other things. Lead nurturing definitely feeds the converting of qualified leads into paying customers. Qualification scoring flows into that, and the lead handoff and management. But really, it's those upper level things that it goes beyond a raw name to taking the right actions to drive that name to a relevant interaction, conversation, to basically guide them towards why your solution from your business is the one that they should consider. And this is how some of the specific issues around data start to affect our campaigns, and the first slide, those high level priorities and challenges. So we all have programs to drive our leads, and the biggest problem is if we don't have that end-to-end alignment. And some people have fantastic attribution, but when you look at the surveys, and I don't have that slide here, but I saw one the other day, I think it was something like 20%, 25%, 30% of marketers don't have any connection. They don't have the alignment between what their program cost and what the outcomes were. And I've been doing some of that type of work recently to build out some of the data set that we have internally to build out into some new calculators we're developing. And it's really interesting that difference between the myth and the reality, which is the program that you think is amazing versus the program that's actually slaying it. And you can't know that unless you measure the effort that goes into it as well as the raw costs, creative, etc. Um, and all of these things, measuring results, creating a single view of the customer with other marketing channels, and then managing data quality, coordinating your different delivery platforms. It's really interesting that when you see the biggest challenge being managing data quality, but attributing programs is the higher ticket, that really forms the foundation for everything else, especially creating that single view of the customer with other marketing channels. So this is something I think it's interesting. A good friend of mine who does search engine optimization pointed out to me. Sorry, we're going forwards in time. He pointed out that when people ask what they're searching for, we're thinking about our solutions. It's akin to the idea of someone who says that they eat really healthy and they only eat like all organic vegetables and fruits and very lean meats. But then you go look at the garbage that's coming out of their house, and it's all Doritos and Mars bars wrappers, and kind of the myth and the reality are a little different. So this is similar to our challenge. Really, when we talk about our programs and we talk about all of the inputs that feed our results, it's not ultimately about the data, it's about the results. Because without the data, straight and usable and having all of the characteristic understanding so that you can market effectively according to your funnel program or your drip program, each of the qualification steps, there's different levels of sophistication within all of our programs, but there are certainly phases of from unknown to known, known to engaged. But without proper data, it's very hard to see those results or certainly line them up. And about quality. The quality of the data is important, but really it's also about operational expenses, right? So if you're in an organization where the big challenge or the big mantra for next year is we've got to cut our OpEx expenses, that's the only way that we're going to really be able to move the needle on our margins. That's a terrifying thing to hear in the marketing group because we're always on the line. But when you think about all of the management costs that go into keeping data marketable, there are operating expenses associated with that because there's a lot of inputs. So if there's ways to manage operational expenses, reduce operational expenses, and have that data quality to drive results, it's a lot easier argument to make to the people that control our budgets. We talk about enrichment. ReachForce, that's one of the things that we do for our customers is enrich and append your leads. And it makes it easier to get great results, like we saw earlier on the slide about Crane Communications. But really enriching it aligns to predictable revenue because you need to know the characteristic business traits of the people who are most likely to become your customers. And then when you can do a look back, you can then predict who the next best customer will be. And when you get down to it, marketing is just a cost. No, it's the basis, and all of these quality improvements are the basis for what I call marketing Moneyball. And this is an example of a different type of quality input, which is on the front end of your leads. Whether it's this is actually an on-page lead appending or data appending solution that we have called SmartForms. And this was a case study that we presented at Serious Decisions last month with LeadMD. And this is just a screenshot of the way that the input works. And the thing that's really cool about this, and I think it really aligns to the overall philosophy that we're presenting, is that just having extra information is not the be all end all. But it becomes the basis not just for an improvement from the beginning, but what I like to think of as geometric step improvements that continue to affect in double-digit percentages steps throughout the funnel that will drive a huge change and improvement that's unimaginable and unattainable without this beginning step. And this is great because I use SmartForms, this technology on our forms, because as the user submits the form, they're actually validating the location. And by validating location, if you have an issue with your lead route and going to the right rep because they handle the Midwest versus New York City at a specific zip code, this actually helps with some of that granular routing and provides a lot of other data inputs depending on how big or small your organization is. But with this data improvement, with this front end data improvement within the case study with LeadMD, the thing that I found so fascinating and actually learned a lot in presenting this case study is that this was taken to begin a whole progression of improvements around persona-based nurture. And one of the discoveries we made in reporting the case study was the questions themselves can actually reduce your response. And I have two favorite examples. It depends on where you're at, what stage of life, which one's going to bother you the most. But it's like going up to someone at a party and kind of locking eyes, and you're about to start a conversation, and you say, "Hey, how much do you weigh?" Well, that's a little bit of an off-putting question. How old are you? That's another one, unless you're 12. So it's not just about reducing questions by providing this input on the front end or getting it right. It's about eliminating the need to ask certain questions at all, never presenting the question. So in this case, with these types of inputs, you don't have to ask the question, how much is your annual revenue? Because the information is supplied in the background. And so it allows for more relevant and engaging questions that are going to create a better path to success for both of you. This is a very complicated slide, and I just kind of love it because first of all, it shows well, but it's impossible to read in a webinar, and I know that. It really just kind of points to a footnoted and benchmark version of the case study I just talked about, where we show that, and we've documented that there are these step improvements throughout the funnel that ultimately will deliver a massively larger amount of revenue. And it all goes to this data quality question. And so these are some of the calculations for the improvement. It's always hard to make the case for the improvement in the theoretical. So this sort of provides some of that theoretical upside. And all of these slides are available to you. If you need this graphic, just shoot an email to Matt Malcolm, mmalcolm@reachforce.com. I put it in the chat. And so this is showing some of that, aspirational quality to what we're able to achieve with good data in marketing. But the bean counters, they need a little bit bigger argument. They need to know how they're going to save money, or what's it mean to me right now. And so we have also benchmarked, and we're going to walk through that in a minute. That's the calculations we're going to talk about. We've benchmarked the various potholes and real costs that we are all paying right now when we are carrying a load of bad data in our systems. And we've also benchmarked that by mailing to that bad data, emailing to it, working with it, it actually can affect and degrade the availability of your other leads because of some of the problems that will be created around deliverability, because we'll get into some of the logic there in a minute. But we've also built a more granular calculator for our customers and for the interested marketing public that we will do for you. We don't have this completed on the website, but you can certainly send us a note or send a note to Matt, and we can run numbers specifically for your database size. We have some that we've pre-configured. This is actually 1 million records with 24 months of degrading, but we'll pop in there the average sales price and your sales cycle, things like that, to really give you that that piece of paper that you can walk into a CIO's office or a CFO's office or your a CMO's office and say, wow, there really is a reason that we really need to act on this. This is not really optional. So now it's learning time. We're going to walk through what those calculations are, and I'm just going to pull up my screen here for a minute and see if there's any questions from y'all. I am not seeing any yet. But by all means, go ahead and use your hand raising or questions if you do have anything come up, and we'll either loop back to them at the end, or I'll answer them in line if there's any confusion. So the way that we have envisioned this and explain it is that well, first of all, we should skip the blank slide. This is interesting. By interesting, I mean, what the heck? Okay, there we go. So when you have this is an asset, right? And it's an intangible. Well, I don't know. I have to think back to accounting if it's an intangible or tangible, but it's certainly it is a real business asset. It has a real value. I've assigned, for purposes of this calculation and to keep it simple, a contact value of $1. Now, there's contact acquisition at somewhat lower price points in volume, 30 to 40 cents each. But you can have a contact that you acquired at a high touch event that was a $250, $500 name. It all blends together, and certainly the recency and the behavioral frequency and engagement is going to make that person more valuable. SiriusDecisions has a rule of thumb that they talk about where, when you talk about cleaning dirty data, it's a $1 input at the front end, it's $10 midstream, and it's $100 at the back end. So this is there's a real issue here. So this is a $100,000 asset nominally, depending on where you put that number, and that's another one of those inputs that we control within our more detailed calculation. I had a conversation with someone who works in the enterprise space, and we, the number that they work from, which I think is reasonable, is $28 per contact. And on that basis, this is a $2.8 million asset that probably should be maintained. So as we walk through this, this is kind of what we just talked about is, what was the acquisition cost and what is the available data around that contact that makes them more marketable. We have not only the title-based information that helps us to understand the decision-making level and interest. We also have the business level information, revenues. I went to a trade show in February where I thought maybe this wasn't the greatest show in the world. We've all had that experience. And I was actually able to run an assessment of the leads I collected the first day using our software, and discovered that, yeah, in fact, it really was a terrible show, like manicurists and real estate agents at a marketing conference. Not awesome. So the more you know about your contacts and your data, and it makes it more responsive, and it makes you more relevant in your conversations. It also lets you know who to ignore and who to delete. And deleting is important, and we're going to get to that. So part of what happens when you have that is you're going to have better targeting by title or persona, or by industry. You're going to have higher open rates. You can build out segmentation around these things, which works with your marketing automation or some of your content management systems. You're going to have higher click-through, more landing page conversions, because your messaging campaigns are likely to be relevant. Again, all of these types of things can be driven by segmentations and dynamic snippets within marketing automation, or whatever your marketing automation calls these things. But without data in B2B, you're going to have terrible results in B2B, because you're just batch blasting, and you're probably just completely irrelevant. And the benchmark we look to is Marketing Sherpa says that 2.1% of contacts go bad every month. So after a year, at minimum, 25% of your contacts are not valid. And that's important, because if you are working from a database that's nominally 100,000 contacts, you have to think about how long those contacts have been acquired and what are your data policies around them. And if you have contacts that have been acquired since 2007 and there hasn't been any assessment about their life, they're just being mailed to, as long as they're not hard bouncing or unsubscribing, they're just getting an email. I have inherited an email address for the marketing group here for all of the predecessor email addresses. And I can guarantee you that there are a lot of people out there who are mailing to previous marketing directors who have been gone for 5 years. So I doubt you're going to get a great response if you're doing that. And cleaning your list by emailing it, right? So you're not keeping track of those soft bounces that are saying over and over again, this person does not work at Google anymore, this person does not work at Google anymore, because it's an operational expense to deal with it. And why the heck not? Well, you're going to be having people landing in spam lists. I've been at shows where I've acquired a list that had spam emails in it, which when I hit, would have put me in a pretty terrible situation as far as my email sender rating. And so there's a system in place within the enterprise and ISPs called a feedback loop that's also measuring the engagement with your email. So if you're sending pointless email to a guy that left 5 years ago, and you're doing that in multiples of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, no one's opening it. It's they maybe are unsubscribing. There's certainly no forwarding, and feedback loops are listening for that type of thing. And so the lower levels of engagement, they may just decide not to deliver it. And Gmail is a perfect example. The mail that shows up that's flagged important is mail that has relevancy. It's proven interaction and engagement relevancy, like the letter from mom. You're going to open that. But those that are irrelevant, and this is what's important, may never even hit the inbox because there's so much email flooding these servers that they're deciding which to deliver and which not to deliver. So, and it's ghost undeliverables. You'll never know it didn't happen. So every time you do bad mailing, it's going to affect your future mailings, and it's going to affect your future open rates. And so all of this is affecting your sender reputation. You're going to have high unsubscribes, and that's another cost, is you're losing a name which otherwise you could have kept if you had a relevant message. So ultimately, your precision targeting is going to make your results more successful. We know that. And your response from a dirty database are way lower than they should be. So now we're getting into some actual calculations around this. So you've been doing irrelevant mailing, you're hitting spam traps, so you're seen as a spammy bulk emailer because you're, just seems pretty pointless from a machine standard. And your low email open rate signal no one wants your email, so your corporate email servers no longer deliver it. And if your sender score is below 80, only 56% of your legit email will be delivered, because that's just the decision the servers have made, because they can't keep hitting all their people with this irrelevant mail. And the more irrelevant your email, the higher your unsubscribe rates. And this is a tip for those of you looking at how well you're doing with your programs. Don't just look at open rates and click-throughs. Make sure you're paying attention to the percentage unsubscribes. Because if you're doing great email that's all targeted, you're going to see a really low number. And this was brought to my attention by somebody who has all of these wonderful things: 35% open rates, 40% click-through. I know, all of us have that for everything. But she had a program that went out, not through a new group, and suddenly, like, the unsubscribe rate, which had been 0.1%, was 2.5%, 3%, which is really serious because those are everybody else's names too. So this is really affecting a critical business asset. And so when you add it all up, you've lost a lot of your mailable people. They're not seeing your email anymore. You've got a bad reputation, which you're having to pay to resolve. Time, money, frustration. You're going to have to acquire more contacts because your other contacts just aren't responding. And we assign a rate to each one of these based on some calculations that this is actually a really interesting one. The previous one is around the reputation. This is about carrying costs, right? So if you have rented a mailbox at UPS, you pay a standard fee every year for your mailbox. When those of us using marketing automation, we have an annual contract fee, which is usually tied to the number of contacts that we are mailing to. In this world, you could be, at the low tiers, an individual contact name in your database could be costing you 48 cents a year. So when you have, say, 1,000 of those, that's $480. If you have 10,000 of those, 4,800. You can do the math. And when you're thinking about, well, why should I clean my database? Why should I worry about this? It's not that big of a deal. Well, ultimately, this alone can be a huge deal. And especially if you're in one of those tiers where you're near the top end, and bringing in new contacts because your database isn't responsive, it's going to kick you into another tier. I mean, it could be $12,000, $24,000 or more dollars, $24,000 per year to pay for the additional service tier based on carrying all these bad records. So again, we put the number to replace at $1 just for simplicity's sake. This could be anything. I mean, if you're getting a really tailored contact it could be much more. So when we add it all up based on that 100,000 record database in this example, this is $83,000 annual cost from mailing to a bad database for 1 year. So that's pretty significant. And when we think about this, I say, oh, wait, I'm seeing your questions right now, so I'm going to pop in here for a minute. Oh, lost audio. Can you guys hear me? Can I see somebody chat me and tell me if you can hear me right now? Oh yeah, I'm seeing my thumbs up from Matt. All right, that's good. So I'm going to come back and look at this in a second. So is there a benchmark? That's a good question. Is there a benchmark for a good unsubscribe rate? I think I think it depends. I've seen programs where in results you could get a 2% unsubscribe rate. To me, that seems terrible. I mean, if y'all want to weigh in, I promise not to keep track of this because I'm on a Mac. I cannot do much with my my webinar here. I certainly can't record anything. But I would say that if my rule of thumb is I want to see a higher click rate than I have an unsubscribe rate, right? So that's at least showing you that your engagement is good. But on a gross number, if I'm over 1%, I think there's something wrong for sure. I would benchmark. I think what I typically do for our programs is I always benchmark something that's slightly better than what we're doing, as long as I feel like our program is at a level of a pretty decent return. So I hope that answered your question to some level, but if you ping me afterwards, I will actually try to research that a bit more for you. And I'm going to come back to questions because they look really interesting, and I think we could really get in the weeds. But I think it also makes sense to come back and kind of dig into them once we've kind of gone through the flip side, which is the happy side of this equation. So this is what I call the clean data performance boost. And this is showing what's going to happen with the same database with a different approach. And again, there are calculations attached to this that will help, help everyone in your organization, whether, again, they're in the IT side or finance side or your marketing group or you're setting priorities, to really see that there's a rationale for investing in this. It makes everyone's life easier, and it certainly makes your results a lot stronger. So, in this example, a clean database has had all the email addresses tested and scored for deliverability. And these can then, the bad ones can be put on the hard bounce list, or your unsubscribed list, which is a good practice because you don't want to delete anybody on your unsubscribed list in case they come back in later. And in doing so, with some of our marketing automation systems and contracts, those two categories do not hit your contract. So they are no longer a cost that you're having to carry. And when you're doing these assessments, you can also identify duplicate records and merge them, and merge all the attributes programmatically. I know in some marketing automation systems, it's a one-off type of duplication and bringing it together. But there's ways to achieve that, including some of our new ReachForce tools, which actually will automate this process and do that continuously in the background as often as you like, as frequently as every hour. So that's pretty cool. Another piece of this, and this is specific to B2B, and I think that's an important distinction, having that enriched information around the business as you acquire a lead or that name comes in from a partnership program you've done or a series of large events where you get pretty slim amounts of information. I heard about a very large trade show that many of us attend last year didn't include phone numbers for the leads that were supplied to the exhibitors, and that was a problem, as you can imagine. So when those phone numbers are missing, you want to have that appended back in. When you don't have a zip code or you don't have an actual mailing address, this type of process can add all of that back in. So it's a two-step thing. One, you're finding the junk and you're eliminating it so that it's no longer going to be a cost for you. And you're getting that elevated information to make all of the records more marketable, which is going to very positively impact your results. And so we talked about this, the mailing address, and one of the interesting things, I haven't done it yet personally, but I'm really excited about the potential to go back into doing direct mail. It's actually one of the programs that Marketo has very famously talked about as one of their their box with fortune cookies program. And it's a way to really break through the clutter and get some awareness, because nobody gets mail anymore. So if you don't have a mailing address, it's really a pain to find one, and certainly at scale. So having that added is very helpful. And there's a lot of these things that can then be baked into segments for your industry or your geographic locations or your specific routing information. So people are going to be assigned to the right sales rep in case there is activity, and they start engaging with the right people right away. So, in our case, our customers see somewhere about an average of 80% appending, and email delivery of 97 to 99%. In the Crane example, Steve Cecina, who won the Marketo Revy Award for the results he achieved after his data cleanse, he said that in some cases that he was seeing 100% deliverability, and we decided we couldn't say that because that just seems like no one believed that. But he's like, no, really, it was 100%. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't put it in print. But as this is interesting, and it's even more relevant because ReachForce had a mailing program that we did back in March and April around the Marketo Summit, and we had the incredible good fortune of having sort of just kind of just nailed a sweet spot that we all enjoyed. It was pretty fun email, and it actually had a lot of forwarding. And in the forwarding, we realized we needed to have an email footer that said subscribe to our list, because we did actually have people subscribing to our list. And this is true. If you see a great report that comes in or a super cool infographic, that if it's on point for the right people, it's going to be widely shared. And if it's not on point because you send it to the wrong people, it's not, and it's going to be deleted. So doing something cool that goes to the wrong people is not going to give you the boost that doing something cool and sending it to the right people is going to have. And again, we're going back to that feedback loop, and this is something you can look into. Sender Score is an example of what feedback scores look like, and those feedback loops are going to have a really positive feeling about your email. And I can speak from experience that we've definitely seen a massive improvement over the last few months, a measurable engagement increase. So that has to do with the relevancy and the targeting. So now this information is, first of all, it's clean, and your segmented messages are going to be targeted carefully, whether it's by persona or industry or title, and you're going to see those improvements throughout the marketing and sales funnel, as I indicated in the chart that we saw with the two different funnels. Your open rates may have tripled or better, and your unsubscribes are 50% of what they were. So when we're looking at all of this, you could be seeing a 50% increase in landing page conversions. If you pop that into your overall flow metrics around how many leads do I need to drive to create X number of opportunities, that's a pretty nice lever to be able to apply just through better conversion from an email. So, and this is based on research from SiriusDecisions. And this is actually based on only a 15% difference in quality. And with that 15% difference in quality, there's a 66% increase in sales. And if you're going from a low bar, which is a database that hasn't been cleaned in 2 years or more, you've got problems, I guarantee it. You could be seeing as much as, if that's following the Marketing Sherpa example, let's say 40% of the data is bad, and you change that and get rid of it, you could be immediately seeing this great return. So we've used their example around this difference in revenue, and so we factored in this $130,000 improvement in sales towards the, why you want to get that clean data for the performance improvement. So, there's always that off the top data cleanse investment, but now you don't have to spend for bad contacts because the ones you have are more responsive. You haven't ruined any contacts that you need to replace. And so you're not paying for that. And you're not carrying for marketing automation because you've been able to push those out. And now you're seeing $189,000 plus revenue boost. And this takes into account the loss that you had on the other side. So sorry for the double counting. I like to expose X. Not really sure how you look at that. If you want to take that out, it's still well over $100,000 against a much fractional amount of that. And it does seem when we look at these sorts of things like this is a cost I don't understand why I'm spending on. But if you're living in that place where the data is iffy and you don't know what the difference feels like, this is what it feels like. It feels like making money. So that's really the math. And like I said, this is I've tried to put this in a storybook format because I think there's a lot of people that come into our groups in sales. One of the first people I had read through this, and this will be in a nice polished ebook coming soon. And I had Matt read it, and he said this was really helpful because it's I suppose it's sort of non-threatening, and it's but it's all completely researched and footnoted to really help drive the dialogue that we all need to have, especially as we're looking into, expectations of higher and higher performance from the investment in marketing automation. And as we get to a level of sophistication where we know more is possible and we want to get rid of any limitation to being able to do that. So I do have, you can get a customized ROI assessment. We're happy to do that for anybody. It's painless, and our sales folks are super cool. You can just shoot an email to sales@reachforce.com or to Matt Malcolm himself, who's in the chat information over here. And you can also learn more about us at our solutions page. And so that's the kind of the wrap up of the overview. And I'm going to go and look at your questions. And if you have more questions, please just go ahead and send them over. Or if you want to send some chats through, I'm just getting to my dashboard here. So yeah, I have a question here from Chris. Thank you. Is it possible to get this dirty data calculator for you to do estimates and scenarios with your data? Yes, absolutely. If you can send an email to Matt, we will hook you up. One thing we do try to find out, because it helps us, we're refining some of the calculations, which is why they're not public on our website yet. We don't have them up for you. We're actually making sure that as you factor in and change out ASPs, it's still, sales cycle and ASP are huge factors. We want to make sure the calculations are still lining up the way that they're supposed to. But by all means, please let him know. And I hope Don got his audio back, because if he didn't, you'll get to hear me again next week when I see you in Chicago. And I'm going to benchmark that unsubscribe rate question. Actually, I got that from 2 of you, so obviously that's a big question. There's a third, 3 of you have asked me this question. And when will the deck be available? I'll have the deck up on SlideShare next week. And in the meantime, if there's specific slides that you want to have a copy of to help you, just ask Matt for that. He's handling all those kinds of questions. And I'm just trying to see if I have anything else here. I always try to keep webinars a little bit on the shorter side, simply because I find that when I get that extra 15 minutes in my schedule, it helps me enormously. And we are almost at 1:45, and so I'm happy to answer more questions, but I did want to keep it to 45 minutes. So if you would like to linger and have a little after party here, I'm going to see if I can take any more of your questions, or if you are done for the day, please just go ahead and cycle out. And I thank you all for coming. I really would love to hear your feedback. If you want to write to me directly at mfirme, M-F-I-R-M-E, at reachforce.com, or marketing@reachforce.com. Both of those come over to my email box. Love your feedback. Love to know what your questions are, how we can make this information more helpful to you and your teams and your leadership. And it was great. I really appreciated all of you coming today. So those of you who are going, see you. Otherwise, I'm going to hang out for 10 more minutes and answer any questions that you might have. Looks like everybody's taking advantage of the chance to have those 15 minutes. Okay, I can see, so here we go. With the increase in conversion of click-through, is this an increase in percent conversion or an increase in net conversion? Did the number of conversions increase, or just the rate at which people converted? That is a really good question, and I thank you for asking that. I've been doing internet marketing for so long, it's embarrassing. I know there's a lot of levers that will convert. There's a number of factors. One, we've seen where there's been a slight increase in friction, which on the landing page with the confirmation step with smart forms, it's usually very slight, but and if you're purely going on raw conversions, you might say, well, I've lost 0.5%. We've also seen it where there's been an uptick in conversions because people like the technology around it. And that was actually one of the unexpected findings that LeadMD reported when they started using smart forms. So they actually saw more people. Another element of this is if you're going from, say, a 10-question form or even I actually saw a 15 or 20 question form the other day for a webinar sign up, and that was like, wow, I can't believe people are doing that. But if you're going from 20 questions to 5, you're going to see an increase in conversions. I can pretty much guarantee it. The only person who that doesn't apply to is HubSpot. It apparently nothing affects their conversion rates because everyone loves their stuff so much. But we all are not, we all don't have 80-person marketing teams to write all that amazing content. I would say that the other piece that's interesting is if you're going from a 5-question form to a different 5-question form with smart forms, you can see a boost in on-page conversions because of the fact that you can ask more interesting questions that are more engaging and people are more willing to answer. So there's a lot of different factors at play, like there is in everything else to do with landing page conversions, but those are sort of the 4 scenarios that I'm familiar with. This was a recorded webinar. It is being recorded currently, so all of the after-party questions and answers will be in the recording unless I accidentally say a cuss word, which I will delete. So you can, I will send out in the thank you for attending email. It will give you a link to the landing page where you can watch it on demand. We do put a form gate there just so we can keep track of who else coming in, and but it will be available next week. Okay, so I have a question which is product specific. I hope you guys have appreciated that I really try to stay on marketing best practice and not our products specifically. Love to talk about products, but the salespeople are way better at it than me. So ReachForce, what kind of global coverage do you offer? This individual has North America and EMEA and APAC. So we have global coverage. We cover the 220 countries in our data set and over 200 million individual company records. And so that gets into a lot of site location information. I believe the coverage currently is about 40% North American, 40% European, and 20% Asian. But we have like real intense pockets of goodness. Like we have incredible coverage of Brazil, for example. So if you are curious to see how our data pending maps up with your CRM information, we offer a full data diagnostic that actually gets into all of these topics. It'll show you which of your emails are undeliverable, what kind of coverage, what kind of appending rates we can provide. So we've been seeing higher and higher appending rates as we've increased our data set. So I believe that we have the largest validated data set of any of the appending service providers. And now with our new technology around the connected marketing data cloud services platform, we can actually pipe it right into your marketing automation or CRM and actually create all this goodness on an ongoing basis throughout the year. But the first step is to get the assessment to see how helpful it would be to you. And our team will really go through from a solution standpoint what makes the most sense for your specific database size or the number of new leads you're collecting, or if you're going to a lot of events. We actually have on-the-fly event appending that we can do for you as part of your onboarding of those leads, and it's very fast and it's very effective. I use it myself, and it keeps like blowing my mind how great it is. So that's my global coverage answer. Thank you for that. Someone sent me a nice compliment. Okay, so somebody asked me what's Chris's email address, but Chris isn't at ReachForce. I was just saying hi. So John, you probably are wondering what Matt Malcolm's email address is here at ReachForce, and he is mmalcolm, MMALCOLM, at reachforce.com. You can always email to marketing@reachforce.com because that will hit me, or me specifically, that's mfirm@reachforce.com. There's always the Twitter, the LinkedIn. Believe me, it all flows back here and we read everything. Yeah, it always cracks me up when I hear the horror stories about salespeople not jumping on leads in a hurry, because like we love to do that. That's part of our SLAs, and that's our favorite thing, is getting back to you in a hurry. So, okay, how does our data quality compare with data.com? Alden. Thank you for your question. Comparing our service with the clean functionality, what do you see as a strength and weakness? You know, that is a very big question. I would say that if you don't mind, I'm going to have Matt follow up with you on that, because we know anecdotally that there have been there's specific differences that are important, and I really don't, you know, I wouldn't want to misstate some of those things. Sometimes it's the factor of the appending rate, or the appending accuracy, or the universe of companies that are being appended. So we also we both offer inline solutions, and it's really just kind of, there's a lot of differences that would take a lot more time to get into. So it's a great question. It's just it needs a bigger answer. So if anybody else has that question, that's a Matt question, not a Mary question. So I'm rolling down to see what other questions. Yeah, so I will say that there are, you know, when you're looking at this holistic view of, you know, how do I manage with, you know, the current data that I have versus what else I have. The thing to remember that this is a marketing problem ultimately, because marketing has to figure out, how do we get more out of our existing leads that haven't converted to contacts? How do we get our existing sales customers to upsell or repeat? So we have different renewal and recurring customer programs. And with those types of programs, actually with all of these types of programs, in many cases, we are relying on accurate input by salespeople. And I think that the salespeople here know that I love them and I admire them greatly. But the only time I've ever heard that accurate input by sales folks happened is if there is some financial incentive or deterrent to enforce compliance. So in a fairly Wild West world where anybody can be an admin in Salesforce, we marketing folks are, as usual, at the mercy of somebody else to achieve the results that we are tasked with getting. So it's more than just landing page conversion, you know, back to the question we had earlier, because if you have landing page, if you go for the higher number of landing page conversions because it was a half point higher on page, but you're giving up all the firmographic information that would have allowed you to accelerate that lead to your pipeline 6 months faster, which is exactly what LeadMD experienced, it's really, you're giving up way too much. So that's why when we talk to people around these solutions, and we're really pleased that we've already brought in a number of new companies on our new platform, we're looking at a holistic view of your specific program, because these solutions work fantastically well when they're aligned with your program. So there's components which not everyone needs, and so that's really how we try to work with our customers and our prospective customers. So I'm seeing here, I think I'm at the end of my question row. I'm just going to go back to the top and see if I didn't miss anything. I think that's it. I still see 20 of you here, so if you have any further questions, I could also just sing some show tunes, but probably not exactly on point. So I'm not seeing any more. I think what makes a lot of sense is if you would like to just email any further questions you have to us. Okay, I do see some hands going up here, and let's see. Sorry, this piece is not working for me. If you do have any follow-up questions, please send them along. And again, if you have any suggestions for future webinars or more details around these types of issues, please let us know, because we do like to keep improving, because we're marketers, and that's kind of where we roll. So thanks again to everyone for attending. I'm going to call it, and that's it for today's webinar, and have a great rest of your day.